I wish I had more wishes. I wish for righteous visions. I wish for 100-gallon tanks full of tropical fishes.
What's up, my wizards? It's Dev. From Mtg, we like magic, and today's special is fish. So I'm going to take you to school with blue-green Merfolk. There are more puns incoming, just a warning. Well, I feel kind of bad for fish people right now, man. Like, there's really no hype or buzz about Merfolk and Ixalan Standard, and everyone's like, we'll just wait until Rivals comes out, and we'll get some good Merfolk, whatever, wait. Actually, I say nay to that. I am a naysayer. I think that once you realize what you're supposed to be doing with blue-green Merfolk, the deck more or less constructs itself, and it's a whole lot of fun, and it's budget, and I think it'll help you win F&M, so let's take a look. Well, this deck ended up playing almost like a combo deck in some respects because it focuses mostly around the interaction between two cards, Metallic Mimic and Herald of Secret Streams. Well, having M&M in the Haas basically means that every creature that you played after Metallic Mimic is now unblockable as soon as you drop your Herald of Secret Streams. That can take people by surprise and just literally end the game right there. It's also at least worth noting that once you play your Herald and you have a Metallic Mimic out, then Herald's toughness will be above cards like Lightning Strike and Braid and things like that. Relevant enough to at least point out, but honestly these cards are fine independent of one another, especially Metallic Mimic. The robot Merfolk is probably the best fish in the deck at the end of the day. Matter of fact, Metallic Mimic is so good that it has the power to make even Deeproot Waters a playable card, so we're going to play 3. I'm making fun of Waters here just a little bit, but it actually does a lot of really cool stuff for us in this deck. I've already mentioned that the interaction with Metallic Mimic is insane, Whenever we play a Merfolk, we not only get a +1/+1 counter on that Merfolk, but we also get a counter on the Hexproof token from Waters. That's crazy. That's a lot of extra power. And making 2/2 Hexproofs is no joke. It's actually very serious. And curving out on turns 2 and 3 from Mimic into Deeproot Waters makes your turn 4 potentially really, really dangerous, You can play a couple of 2-drops and get extra tokens out of your 2-drops, plus extra power on all 4 of those creatures. You make a couple of 2/2 Hexproofs, like that's super explosive, and then turn 5 you play your Herald of Secret Streams, and you swing in 10 unblockable really easy. Not to mention that Deeproot Waters helps out Herald of Secret Streams, Up until you play your Herald, you're just filling your board with a bunch of 2/2 Hexproof guys, not to mention whatever Merfolk you had to play in the first place to get the tokens. So, just makes us go super wide, and by the time Herald comes down, we've got a lot of guys on board to swing in with. And by the way, the card isn't too bad on its own, even without support from Mimic or Herald or whatever. The card isn't bad if you can resolve it against control, for a couple of reasons. First of all, it doesn't matter if you resolve a Merfolk after that, as long as you cast a Merfolk spell. Whether it's countered or not, you get a 1/1 Hexproof. And after 2 or 3 Merfolk, whether they resolve or not, having 3 Hexproof guys against like Blue-White Approach is going to make them sweep you. So the card is even good in some cases just by itself, so it definitely earns its slots in the deck. But on to more Merfolk, because we got bigger fish to fry, am I right? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But anyway, we're playing 22 Merfolk in this deck, again, not counting Metallic Mimic. And I think it's important to play some Merfolk that can get +1/+1 counters, regardless of whether we have a Mimic out. So with that in mind, I'm going to play 4 Merfolk Branchwalker and 4 Tishana's Wayfinder. Well, Branchwalker is actually just a good creature in its own right. Like, this is a fine card, It's going to come in as a 2-power, 2-mana thing no matter what. And sometimes it's got 3 power, and sometimes it draws you a land. And having all these Explore guys in the deck really helps with getting the lands that you need consistently. So that's pretty important, too. Sometimes these kind of draw you a card, and sometimes they just get bigger and get that counter that you need for Herald. But these automatically get better with a Mimic out, too, With a Mimic out, both of these can get to 4 power, and you've only invested 2 or 3 mana. That's pretty sweet. I'm also going to play 4 Kumina's Speaker in this deck. I think it's important to play a 1-drop for a few reasons. I want to get on board as quickly as possible and attack against control. I want to be able to trade up against a lot of aggro decks. I think that's important. The card does both of those things. And if you've got a Mimic out and you play a Speaker, you've paid 1 mana for a 3/3. It's a good deal too, This enables, too, some of those like turn 3, turn 4, turn 5 plays, where you're trying to take advantage of Metallic Mimic or a combination of Mimic and Deeproot Waters, This allows you to play like Wayfinder and a Speaker on turn 4. That's pretty good. And sometimes, occasionally, you'll be able to play like turn 4 2-drop and 2 Speakers, get 3 tokens. It's ridiculous. So I do want a 1-drop in here so that we can sort of maximize the way we use our mana on certain turns. I'm also going to play 4 River Sneak, which is one of the best cards in the deck, kind of. Just a really reliable, dependable source of damage that's always going to at least do 1, but often will do 2. And once you got a Deeproot Waters in play, and you play a Merfolk, then you're swinging in for 3. So it gets a little out of hand. Not to mention that if you play it with a Metallic Mimic in play, well, then you're swinging 2 every turn, no matter what. River Sneak is also kind of good on curve with Deeproot Waters, you know. It's not quite as good as Metallic Mimic is, but it still sets up good like turn 4 and 5 plays where you're swinging a lot of unblockable damage, you know, even without a Herald of Secret Streams. If you go turn 2 River Sneak into turn 3 Waters, well then on turn 4 you can again just play like 2 2-drops, get 4 guys on board, and swing in 5 unblockable. That's a pretty good turn 4 play. And it's not the worst top deck ever, especially, again, if you have a Metallic Mimic out, then you've just gotten a relatively reliable source of 2 damage every single turn. So that can help in games, too. It's a fine top deck some of the time. So I was actually kind of impressed by River Sneak. This is a decent 2-drop. And to finish off the fish, we're going to play a pretty self-explanatory 2 of Kapala Warden of Waves, because we got to do it. I'm just going to play a 2 of because I don't want to go overboard. I don't know if that's a fish joke or not. Maybe I should have said that in the Pirates deck. But anyway, don't want to go too crazy when it comes to Kapala or anything. But we do need her for protecting what are essentially combo pieces. You know, Metallic Mimic, Herald of Secret Streams. These amount to combo pieces in some ways. And even River Sneak we want to protect. As far as the rest of the spells in the deck besides Deeproot Waters, we have limited slots here, but I'm going to try to use them wisely with 4 copies of Blossoming Defense and 3 copies of Chart a Course. Blossoming Defense is just a no-brainer. I just said it, but we're trying to protect our essentially combo pieces in this deck, and Blossoming Defense is just 1 mana for that. I've already said that we have explosive plays on turn 4, provided we do a couple of important things on turns 2 and 3. And so you won't often play Herald of Secret Streams on turn 4. You'll often hold off until turn 5 or 6. And at that point, you should have the extra mana to hold up Blossoming Defense to protect your Herald or your Mimic or whatever you need to protect. Also like that this protects River Sneak and gets it through for more damage. That's pretty cool. You know, you swing in with your Sneak, they try to lightning strike it or something, you say no, and you get in for at least 3, and very often more than that with the Sneak. So you're countering their spell, and you're getting in for more. That's super dope. And it's also good in combination with Kapala in some ways, because when they finally get to play their 4 mana, should be 2 mana removal spell, then you can say no, and that will make people pull their hair out. And by the way, just sort of as an aside here, while we're on the subject of all the things that protect our creatures and how much we need to protect our creatures, I should at least mention briefly that our entire deck is immune to Walk the Plank for what it's worth, and it's kind of worth a lot. Anywho, Chart a Course is an important card in this deck because, again, we're kind of sort of a combo deck. We're looking for a piece a lot of the time, whether it's Mimic, Herald of Secret Streams, or sometimes even Deeproot Waters. Chart a Course for just 2 mana, whether we've attacked or not. We get to see 2 cards, pick one of them, and then get rid of the other one. But of course, if we've attacked, then we get to keep both cards, and it's not hard to attack at all in a deck with 26 creatures. And it's pretty easy to attack consequence-free with an unblockable guy like River Sneak, and sometimes all of our guys are unblockable. So Chart, of course, definitely has a place in this deck, because we're usually looking to dig for one thing or the other, and it's a really, really low mana way to do that. We're playing 24 lands in this deck, and yeah, definitely hash up Oasis. Great with River Sneak, and great when we start getting all of our guys to be unblockable. You know, just really awesome card with unblockable creatures. I'm playing all of the hash up Oasis. Aside from that, pretty, you know, it doesn't really need much explanation. If you've got more money, you'll play Botanical Sanctum in this deck, but I wanted to hit a $50 budget on this, so I didn't include Sanctum, but it's the first upgrade I would make if I had the cards or the money. Here's our super simple sideboard right here. Spell Pierce is very important against sweepers. If you're playing against control, we can come up against Sweltering Suns, Hour of Devastation, sometimes even Hour of Revelation, and definitely Fumigate and Settle the Wreckage. There are a lot of quality sweepers in this format that can really make us have a bad time. So Spell Pierce is good against every single one of those. We're going to play it in the sideboard. Sentinel Totem is mostly in there for Godfarer's Gift decks, but also lots of other graveyard strategies, but I wanted a way to hose Godfarer's Gift, and this is one of the better ways in the format. Life Goes On is in there against the mono-red aggro decks that are still going to be a force. All this is in there for is so we can gain 4 to 8 life, stay in the game for a turn or 2, and hopefully set up our combo, because honestly, by the time we've set up our combo, as long as we've lived until then, we usually don't care what aggro's doing, because we just end the game. Problem is, we got to make it to that point in the game first, and Life Goes On helps with that. Larger Than Life is in there, inversely, against Control. We want to be able to speed up our clock a little bit against Control decks, and Larger Than Life helps with that, especially if we've got a River Sneak out. It's super sweet. Play a Merfolk, especially with the Deeproot Waters out, you play a Merfolk into a Larger Than Life, and suddenly a River Sneak is swinging for like 6 or 7. It's ridiculous. So, this is a very good card. Even without River Sneak against Control, you can just get in a Communis Speaker for a lot of damage with a Larger Than Life. We want to speed up that clock. And then Dissenter's Deliverance is just a catch-all against artifacts, and it can draw you a card when you need it to, and you'll often need it to. A couple of upgrades that are possible for this deck are definitely Verdurous Gearhulk, first and foremost. I just didn't want to pay the money for Verdurous Gearhulk, and it's not even a Merfolk, whatever, but it obviously goes in this deck, and is pretty good after Herald, you know? If you got Herald turn 4, then Verdurous Gearhulk turn 5, then more or less your entire board can be unblockable at that point, too. And it's a pretty freaking sweet creature in and of itself, so Verdurous goes in if you got the dollars. As far as the sideboard, if I had $3 a pop, I'd put in Shaper's Sanctuary all day. This really punishes our opponents for trying to remove our creatures, and they're going to be doing a lot of that between not only control decks, but even mid-range and aggro decks play a bunch of removal. So Shaper's Sanctuary can be good in a lot of different matchups. It's just still a little bit too expensive here right as the set comes out for me to consider it for the sideboard, especially with some other options that we have. But if I had the money, I'd find room for Sanctuary. It looks really good. And here are your power rankings right here. A final score of 60, which is pretty admirable, honestly, for a $50 budget deck. This deck does kind of depend on getting its pieces out, but once it does, it kind of doesn't have to focus on what the opponent's doing. We're not a very interactive deck, but that's mostly because as long as we can make it to the point where we get Herald of Secret Streams down and can do some unblockable damage, we kind of don't care what they're doing. Like, we're sort of racing them a little bit. Again, against some decks, we'll need some help, but against mid-range decks and control decks, as long as we can resolve certain things, then we can actually give people headaches, man. Like, Herald of Secret Streams coming down and having importance the turn it enters the battlefield is actually really, really important for this deck. Because again, once our combo pieces are in place, we've got somewhat of full board, few +1/+1 counters on guys, and we play a Herald, we can end the game very quickly at that point. This is our first budget deck of the season. Again, it's only $50. That's not really much to ask for a good, decent, competitive F&M deck, you know? And kind of cool thing here is if you go ahead and get some of these cards, then you'll be ready for when Rivals comes out. There's probably going to be some decent Merfolk in Rivals that maybe make it a relevant tribe. And if that's going to happen, then you'll already be equipped with some of the pieces you need for that deck. So it's at least worth going ahead and trying this deck out for a few weeks until Rivals comes out early next year. And then again, you'll be set up. But I'm tapped out for now. Let me know how you felt about this one down there in the comments section. Would you build it any differently than I did mine? Because again, there's a couple of different ways to build Merfolk in this format, and I'm always interested in what you're interested in. Speaking of what you're interested in, you might be interested in this. I just recently spoke with Sam Tang on his YouTube channel, Play MTG, a little bit about our first deck tech of the season, Red Green Dinosaurs. A lot of you guys had questions in the comments section of that video. I sent those over to Sam, and then he and I sat down together to sort of answer some of your questions about that deck. So head over to Play MTG. I'll leave a link in the description. You can check out the video where I talk a little bit more with Sam about Red Green Dinosaurs and address some of the concerns you had about that deck. And one more thing regarding Sam, actually. Sam is the creator of the Kitchen Table Magic podcast, which if you're not familiar with, you should get acquainted with, because he's had awesome guests on the podcast. He's had the Professor from here on YouTube. He's had Richard Garfield, the creator of Magic the Gathering, and a bunch of other awesome guests from the community. And as a matter of fact, I'll be on the podcast on October the 3rd, and I'll leave you a link down there to the Kitchen Table Magic podcast so you can check that out. It's just me and Sam talking shop, talking magic, talking life, talking all that stuff. If you're interested in the interview, go over to KTM, and again, I'll leave a link in the description so that until October the 3rd rolls around, you can listen to some other interviews Sam has done with some pretty awesome people. But that's all I got for now. If you enjoyed the video, I hope you liked the video. That would mean a lot to me. You can also sub if you haven't done that yet for more Ixalan deck techs, because there's going to be a bunch of them. Make sure you hit the bell for the notifications, because that's what YouTubers are supposed to say. You can also follow me on Twitter at SBMTGDev so you know when new videos come out. Or you can kick me a buck on Patreon if you're super cool. It's patreon.com/SBMTG. And remember, if you want to view this deck list in a more condensed form than a 15 or 20 minute YouTube video, just click the first link in the description box and that'll take you over to my sponsor, TCG Player. Then you can view the deck list, do whatever you want. You can go crazy at that point, you know. But I'm Dev from SBMTG, and remember, just keep swimming. Thanks for watching, my wizards.